Good evening. If you suspected someone you know, say a family member, friend or a colleague, was being abused, what would you do? It's a big question on a very sensitive subject. But today the Welsh Government launched a campaign urging people to take action and report it. It comes as new figures were released showing the number of people calling a domestic abuse helpline on behalf of someone else has risen by some 15%. Hannah Gamlin has been talking to survivors and has tonight's top story.
I was in a psychologically abusive relationship. You know, I'm normally this bubbly social person, and I became very withdrawn and tearful, very quiet. You know, I was afraid, I was anxious, I was depressed. And if it hadn't been for my colleagues, you know, asking me that one simple question, you know, are you okay one day? That, you know, I was having a particularly bad day and I just blurted everything out and I disclosed. And that was, I guess, the start to me realising I was being abused and then, you know, ultimately escaping the abuse.
Lisa Marie escaped that relationship 18 months ago. The abuse she experienced is a familiar story, but how she escaped it isn't.
That one simple question from my colleague asking if I was okay changed my life, and I will be forever grateful.
Today, she joined other survivors of domestic abuse as part of a campaign called Don't Be a Bystander.
You saw me change.
You sensed my hurt.
You knew I wasn't myself.
Just saying, are you okay, to somebody that you think isn't okay, can be all they need to get themselves out of that situation, or to make them realise that other people have noticed that what they're living through isn't okay. But it is very important that everybody takes a stand on this so that we get our society to a place where this is just not tolerable.
Intervention from Mary's neighbours helped her escape 2 years of violence. But it wasn't the first time people in her life had intervened.
One of my colleagues actually said to me at one stage, that's one bruise too many. And a comment like that, that little glimmer of light, was something that gave me the courage to actually step forward and move on.
So what would you say to other people who might not think it's their place to intervene?
I think it's for people not to be scared about approaching a victim. Say something, because you never know where that something will lead.
A lot of things were happening at home, you know, noise in the house, shouting, screaming. I used to think, where are my neighbours? Why, you know, help, can anyone hear me? But I guess people are of the mentality, it's none of my business, I don't want to be involved. We all need to be encouraged to ask and act. And, you know, it saved my life. I could still be in that relationship now.
Well, I'm joined now by Gwendolyn Stirk from Welsh Women's Aid and Martin Blakebrough from the drugs charity Kaleidoscope. Martin, I'll start with you if I may. You actually worked with Lisa Marie, who we saw in that report, and as she was saying, as colleagues, you intervened.
Yes, I mean, it's a very difficult situation because Lisa shares an office with me and a number of us in the central team, and she's a very bubbly character, and to see those bubbles reduce was quite alarming in a way, because you're used to someone coming in and coming up with ideas and they're just slowly going into themselves. And I think, you know, a number of us were sort of going, well, what's wrong and how can we help? And I think one of the most important things was actually identifying someone who could just speak to Lisa in private and go, are you okay? And I think it was just that question that her colleague Emma asked that meant that she was able to express what was going on. And as she said, she blurted it all out and we were able to respond.
I suppose instinctively, you probably think, oh, it's nothing to do with me, I'll stay well out of it. Can you understand that kind of sentiment?
I can, and I think, you know, as all organisations, we've all done that. We've sometimes ignored it. And I think, you know, at Kaleidoscope we have 300 people we employ, and I think, you know, we've had a number of people who've been subject to abuse, and I think, therefore, we've made the policies that mean that we're able to look at well-being and welfare and able to ask those difficult questions. And making sure, above all, that when you ask that question, you're able to put support around them. I think with smaller businesses, it can be very difficult to do that.
Gwendolyn, domestic abuse is a fairly broad term that we use. It's not just physical abuse, is it? And it's not just women.
No, although it is predominantly women, but it's a pattern of coercive and controlling behaviour that happens over a period of time often, in which one partner exerts power over another, and that can incorporate physical violence, but it also incorporates psychological, emotional and economic abuse as well.
I suppose if people are going to intervene, they need to be satisfied that something will be done once they've done that, and they will be listened to.
Yes, and that's, I think, why this campaign is so important and why we as an organisation are supporting it. We've been working with communities to train organisations like Kaleidoscope and other organisations to be able to understand what that abuse is and understand where they can signpost to the right support. So signposting to the Live Fear Free helpline, which is the national helpline funded by Welsh Government, which we run, and also to the local services in their communities that our members that provide that specialist support to women like Lisa that need that sort of support, not only to deal with the immediate issues, but also to recover and build a life free from the violence and abuse that they've experienced.
Briefly, Martin, I think the audience would like to know, how is Lisa Marie doing now?
She's doing really well, and actually she's had a huge support from Women's Aid, which also helps so much. She's now engaged. I'm going to an engagement party coming up in May.
That's great.
And she's back to her bubbly self.
Oh, well, that's great news, and thank you both for joining us. Thank you.